Hey everyone, this is That Guy in Hutch, Jason Probst, and you're listening to That Podcast in Hutch. So today, this is going to be a fun conversation for me. Many of you know I do biking across Kansas every year, and this year I was really excited because it came through Hutchinson, and we spent the night in my town, and so I was very happy with that, and Hutch did a great job of welcoming all the riders in. But I thought on the heels of that, it would be a good time to bring my friend Tyler Kershner in, and we'd talk about our experience on biking across Kansas. So Tyler, thanks for coming in today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so originally you may remember that our plan was, and this is something that is not terribly uncommon on BAK, we had this grand plans that since we were in Hutchinson, we were going to eat our dinner, hang out, maybe go over here next door to the brewery and drink a beer or two, and then we were going to come over here and record. But time tends to move a lot more slowly on BAK, or at least it's not very linear on BAK.
That's right.
So let's talk about, you want to start out talking about this year's BAK?
Yeah, man. This was a great one, and it's fresh in our memory. So,
well, it was hot.
So hot and humid.
Yeah.
All of that rain was baking off, and we were just...
Well, that's the thing. So we had really nice weather before, right? Like 80s, and we had a lot of rain. And then there were times on this trip that you could just see the humidity in the air.
Heat index is 106 one day, I think it was.
Yeah, I think there was one that was 109.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
It was 109 heat index. And I remember, we stopped in Marion. After we left Hutch, we went to Hillsboro, spent the night in Hillsboro. I had a miserable night in my tent. That was the night that I decided I was done camping outside because I woke up every hour dripping in sweat in my tent with no air moving through it. And then we went to Marion, and at the park in Marion, some guy said, well, the humidity is 93% today.
That was about right.
I would have rather it had been 100 because at least it would have been raining.
Right? Yeah. Something to cool us off. And then we left out of Marion and had one of the hilliest days of the year on that stretch of road east of Marion onto Elmdale.
Oh, yes. What do they call that? Hernia Hill.
That's right.
Big hill east of Elmdale on that county road. So you come off of Highway 50. We come off of what, 156?
Yep.
And then we go a little bit onto 50, and Elmdale's right there. And you turn east on that county road that takes you to Chase County Fishing Lake.
Yep.
And that hill there is the most depressing thing in the world. And I remember my first BAK, we did that same hill.
That's right. We I don't remember where we overnighted, but we were on our way to Council Grove. So we took that little stretch into Cottonwood Falls, and then north into Council Grove where we overnighted.
Yeah.
I remember that. It was 2015. Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things about that hill is you climb and climb and climb and climb and climb, and it's very steep, and you're going so slow if you're going at all. A lot of people end up walking their bikes up that hill. And you get to the top of it only to realize that there's like a stage 2.
Yes, false plateau. Don't we love those?
Yeah.
And you're out of gears 100 yards in usually, and your momentum is just sapped so early on.
Yeah, and so you're just putting up this hill with no power, and you realize you have more to go. So you can take a little break and a breath if you want, but you're going to end up having to do a little more work before. Now, the other side of the hill is pretty nice.
Oh, yeah. It's you ratchet it up over that short duration there, but then you get to ride nice downhill curves for a few miles after that. It's pretty sweet.
You know, the other thing about that same day is that we stayed in Olpe that night, is that we went from Hillsboro to Olpe.
To Olpe, yes.
And Olpe we were driving into the wind from Emporia, and that was 9 miles, right?
Mm-hmm.
9 miles from Emporia down to Olpe was all headwind.
And it was that really rough chip surface on the road.
Yep.
Yeah, which also just takes all your momentum out of you.
Yeah.
It was hot. I think some folks made the mistake of stopping at the brewery there in Emporia because we were just a block away from it. And,
oh yeah.
And boy, that'll
Yeah, so that we go down there, and you can't really stop for a beer before you're done, because you'll lose all your momentum, and your body just kind of says, okay, that's my sign that I can stop riding now.
Yeah. I've seen some folks do it. I don't know how they do it. I can't. Once the beer starts, the cycling's over for me.
Yeah, me too. And I want to make sure I get where I'm going to get my camp set up, get cleaned up a little bit, and then I'm ready for whatever. But up until that point, as long as I got to get back on that bike, I've got to be careful about how I manage myself through the day. Mm-hmm. I think, would you say that's?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that was the day that we had the ridiculous heat index, and I want to say the temp was like 97.
But the heat index was much higher than that because it was so humid that day.
Yep.
And those rumble strips that we were talking about, and I don't know why, but on US 50 near Emporia, the rumble strips run all the way across the shoulders, where most of the state, they're just barely into the shoulder.
Yep. And so you can't really ride the shoulder because there's no way to escape the rumble strips. It's just, it kills your momentum, and it rattles everything on your bike.
But you can't get out on the road because there's a lot of traffic on Highway 50.
Yeah.
So you're just kind of stuck.
Yeah.
People were really unhappy with the engineering on that day.
Oh, I heard people talking about sending pictures to the highway department, and
oh yeah, Kimberly did. Our friend Kimberly.
Yes.
She tweeted it at KDOT and said, "What is this? Like, how am I supposed to ride on these?"
Yep.
That it wasn't very safe. So we talk about this, and what one of the things about BAK that's funny is there's all these kind of stories of adversity, right? Like everybody this year was like, oh, you guys had a lot of wind, you had a lot of heat. Everybody was talking about this one of the hardest years they remember. But we're doing it, and we're still like, well, yeah, it was hard, but we had fun. So from your perspective, I guess, let's talk a little bit about why we do this seemingly crazy thing every year, and not only do it, but get really excited about it and look forward to it all year long.
Well, I mean, it's like summer camp. You know, you get to see all your friends that you haven't seen since last summer. Mm-hmm. There's just that social aspect of it, but then there's the kind of the shared experience, the shared adversity. My first BAK was 2013, which featured the infamous cold water leg of BAK, which anybody who rode that day remembers not fondly. You know, we would call that type 2 fun. But they
type 2 fun is the type of fun that you choose.
That you're not having fun while you're doing it, but later you recall it fondly.
Yeah. You're like, oh, that was fun.
Yeah. Type 1 fun is just fun.
Yeah. Which you have those days too.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. And we had some this year. We had a couple days that were just prime riding weather. But yeah, there's you get to these towns after just a real brutal day, and everybody's feeling it, but you're all feeling it the same. Mm-hmm. And it's like, hey, man, we did that. People that you don't even know, new faces that you're just meeting for the first time. You know, everybody's like, we did it. Man, 50 miles. Yeah, that cold water day was 50 miles into a 25 to 35 mile an hour headwind. It was like 102 that day. Those 50 miles were minimal shoulders, high farm traffic, high impatient traffic on very new black top.
So highly reflective.
And that wind was not a refreshing wind that you were just eating for 50 miles.
Yeah.
You know? But we got there. There were, if I recall right, 2 shower heads in the school for for the men. I don't know what the women's was like, but 2 shower heads for the men, but we got through it. And at the end of that day, you know, people were feeling it. They were feeling kind of wiped out, but there was still that camaraderie of, heck yeah, man, we just did that.
No, that's kind of the one of the fun things about it too, right? Like you do that, and then everybody can talk about it, right? We all have, like you said, this shared adversity. We all had, our fun, but we also had the challenges, and we had the same challenges. So usually, and we all have the same, if the water's cold at a school, it's cold for all of us. If it's hot at a school, It's hot for all. And we had some of that this year too.
Oh yeah.
One place had really hot water, which you normally wouldn't. You're happy to have some hot water, but on some of these hot days, it's not what you wanted. And that one school, I think they had nothing but hot water.
Yeah, you might as well have not dried off after the shower because it was just like a sauna in there. But it's just part of it. It's not bad. I mean, it's. It didn't ruin the day. It was just, okay, that's just one more thing. Do you want to ride in a headwind for 5 miles, 10 miles, whatever it is? No, but you do it because it's just part of BAK. With every headwind, there's usually a tailwind. With every uphill, there's a downhill. With every cold shower, there's a hot one. Don't worry about it. Take your hot shower and move along. That's part of it.
Yeah. Well, and we talk about that when we're writing too. Like there's kind of these parallels to life, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you're not gonna love every minute of it. We joke that you're not gonna love every mile. There are going to be miles that are awful, and it's just part of it. But you can't get to the miles that you like without some of the headwinds, without some of the hot days. But there are those days that are just miraculous, right? You get up in the morning, you see the sunrise, the weather's right, temperature's right, traffic's low, there's wildlife, there's
good food.
There's good food all over the state.
There's the best tea you've ever had in your life.
Oh, let's talk about this. Okay, because I know this was the biggest hit on BAK this year, was the mint tea done out at Partridge. And when I got there, I realized that it's someone I know here in town, Lois Mast, was there, and she and some other ladies had made this tea. And talk about that, because it's like legendary now at this point.
No hyperbole at all. That was the best tea I've ever had in my life. And you should see my tea cabinet at home right now of all the mint tea that I've bought trying to recreate that to no avail. Nothing anywhere close to what we had that day. But, I mean, it was just like this little bit of, I guess what hikers would call like trail magic. Just like this little bit of serendipity or divine providence that just pops up in the middle of your day. And here we're cruising along, and there's this little roadside stand that someone put up in their yard. This woman put up in the yard of this homemade mint tea that was the most fabulous tea, and that was a rough day. And it
was hot. It was hot and humid that day too.
Yep, very flat. So a lot of people think flat bike riding is easy. It is not. You never get to stop pedaling.
Yep.
And cruising into that, I put some in my water bottle and was just like, this is like heaven in a cup. This was amazing. I think that was probably the topic of 50% of the conversations that evening.
Was about the tea.
Yeah. Holy cow, did you have that tea?
Yeah. Everybody was asking, did you stop? Did you have the tea? Did you try it? And everybody that had it was like, oh yeah, it was amazing. Couldn't believe. And I hung out there quite a while because I think I had maybe 3 cups full of that tea before I left. But it was just such a nice break in the day. There were actually 2 stops in Partridge that were really nice. I don't know if you...
The one north of town with the bicycle sculpture.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember that too.
Yeah.
Very, very great stop.
They had a dunk tank. They had pie. It was just amazing. And just that there was 2 stops that close together before we got in town. And then when we got into Hutch, we had this great reception in Hutch at Harley's, and Sandhills was there. As soon as you got off your bike, there was a beer for you.
Oh my God. It was just, so I went from the best tea I've ever had, and then we turned north and got to cash in the sweet tailwind.
Oh yeah.
And I'm racking up 3-minute miles, just zoom, 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 stop at that next sag stop, refilled my water bottles, checked out what they had going on, hopped back on, rode that tailwind, turned into Hutch, and get there. And when we rolled in there by Harley's, the first thing I saw was my favorite brewery in the world, Sandhills, and Pippin, who you had on your show a couple weeks ago, with my favorite beer. They've got that honey lavender saison, and it was just like, could today get any better? It was just one thing after another, and then...
Well, it did get better because we came down We went and had dinner at Carl's, and
Yep.
then we came down here and had more of your favorite beer.
That's right. That's right. And my girlfriend came and joined me that evening. That was pretty nice. And yeah, we just got to take a lot in. Got to see some friends from BAK past that we didn't get to ride with.
Yeah.
Trevor and Mac were there.
Oh yeah,
in Carl's.
yeah.
So yeah, it was just a great day. Just was wonderful.
So, and every year has that sort of experience, right? Like we have other years, we talk about Gossel, when we went to Gossel and how much fun that town was. And we weren't sure about how Gossel was going to be because it was this very small town. But we got there, they had a band, they had a kind of beer garden set up for us. They had all sorts of activity. I don't even know how they pulled that off. We've had other towns where we've done that too. You just go into these little towns. And I think that's the other thing, aside from the cycling, aside from the experiences that you meet that you get to encounter while you're riding, there's also this whole experience of seeing the state in a completely different way, and seeing these towns. And one of the things I like about it is it's so people are so open and warm when you're on this tour. And everyone, you can talk to anyone, everyone can talk to you, and you just find out so much about people in the towns they live in and why they live there and the history. People will just open up about all the things in their town.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they're excited to see all of us. Some of these little towns, we double the population when we roll in.
Yeah.
800 hungry cyclists roll in and eat up all their food and drink up all their beer, but they want to talk. They want to know what we're doing. They're interested. They're excited. You rode how many miles?
Yeah.
You started where? It almost becomes almost like a script for us by the end of BAK, because it's always, well, where are you going today? Well, where'd you roll out from this morning? So you started in Colorado? What town? And so it's just like, okay, we started in Syracuse. Well, this morning we left from, Hillsborough or whatever. It just, because we get the same questions over and over. These people are just curious, about what BAK is, what it means.
Yeah, and why, and what we're doing and where we're going and why we're doing it.
Yeah.
You said that about the towns. I remember, so we did the route, I don't remember what year it was, it goes along Highway 36 for the most part in northern Kansas.
Yes, that was 2016.
Okay.
Yep.
And we went on that one, and there was a town we went to, and I remember that a gal told us that she loved it that we were there because, everybody's got a phone, so Google Maps tracks us all on our phone. And she said, the first time ever, my phone told me that traffic was heavy and moving slow today. Because it doesn't make a big distinction between whether it's a car or a bike. It just knows that all of a sudden this town that usually has no traffic now has 800 phones moving at 12 miles an hour.
Yep.
And it thinks there's a big traffic jam somewhere. I always thought that was kind of funny.
So that was the year that we went through Mankato.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up in the little town of Jewell,
okay,
north central Kansas, which is about 11 miles from Mankato. And the closest swimming pool to Jewell was Mankato.
Uh-huh.
And so in the summers, I would ride my little BMX bike from Jewell to Mankato, 11 miles. No water bottle, just a kid in his swimming trunks going to the pool. And then, 11 miles back home. And that was where I actually learned about BAK.
Okay.
I was leaving the pool to go back home, and at the high school, right off the highway in Mankato, I saw a bunch of tents and bicycles. And I was like, what the heck's going on there? So I rode over to see, and I saw a guy setting up a tent and went over and struck up conversation with him. I'm like, what is this? What's going on here? I said, well, this is BAK. We're riding our bike across Kansas. And, the same thing, you're doing what?
Yeah.
But I was fascinated by it. And he gave me a hat, which I still have, this hat from 1986, I think it is.
Oh, wow.
But Mankato is where I found out about BAK. And I lived in Jewell.
Uh-huh.
And that year we went from Mankato south to Jewell and over through Randall, and I want to say Jamestown, and then up into Belleville. You could just go from Mankato to Belleville, but that's like super short, 30 miles or whatever. It'd be a short day. So they routed us through Jewell, my old hometown. So I rode by my old house. And
yeah. Do you, well, talk about that a little bit. Like, so did you want to, was that the moment, at that moment, did you want to do BAK?
Oh, absolutely. It inspired me, and I thought, wow, that is pretty neat. I went, saved up my money, and bought my first 10-speed. This was back when we still had 10 speeds, you know. I don't even know how many gears my bike has on it. I guess it's probably 20. It's a 2x10. But yeah, it inspired me. I wanted to ride more, you know. And then life happened, and it kind of forgot about it for a while. And then, you know, in my late 30s, I wanted to work on my fitness and get in better shape. Mm-hmm. And I always had that little nugget in the back of my mind of I should do BAK. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, that's what prompted me. That one encounter in Mankato years and years ago.
You know, I think that happens with a lot of people. I think a lot of us, we saw something. Somebody was doing this. For me, it was, I'm not sure if it was BAK. It seemed like they may have stayed in Nickerson one year, but the Transamerica route runs through there. So I would see, you know, my mom and I would go downtown to the post office to check the mail, and then maybe over to the cafe, and then I would see all these cyclists coming through. But I think they were riding across the country. But to me, and I'd be curious to see if it kind of hit you the same way too. When you're a kid and you're on your bike, you know, your world, then that's the first big expansion of your world.
Absolutely.
Right? You've been limited to your home or wherever your parents allowed you to walk. And when you get a bike and you can ride, now your world starts to get a lot bigger. And the idea to me that I could get on a bike and ride across the state or to another town or across the country seemed, you know, marvelous.
Oh, yeah.
That I had, wow, you can do that. You can ride your bike as far as you want to ride it. You know, and at that age, that seemed incomprehensible. Before cars, before you can buy a plane ticket and, you know, hop anywhere you want in the world in a half a day. You know, the idea that you get on your bike and ride your bike, so much freedom in that, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It gave me access to a swimming pool. You know, normally I would have to hitch a ride from my mom or whatever, you know, but now I could go to the pool whenever I wanted. And then to, you know, have this new idea planted in my brain, well, you can go so much further than just a swimming pool. To me, it went from this 11-mile range of freedom that it gave me to, oh, wow, you can go camping.
Yeah, almost limitless, right?
Yeah.
Limitless freedom.
Yeah, as much as you want to put on your bike, you can go.
So then you mentioned in this sort of happening, and maybe there's another episode where we talk about the weird parallels in our life, but that's probably not for this one. But coming back to that later, and I think that's a thing that happens too, right? Like you have this thing, and there's something about cycling, about like the freedom that's associated with it, and the fun. I think that, you know, after a while in adult life, and it can get kind of heavy and it can get kind of weighty, you know, everything in the world and life can be, you know, exactly the right word, but it does. It's just heavy, right? Mm-hmm. And at some point, it seems a lot of people, something triggers in their brain, and they say, I want to get on a bike again. And it certainly was for me, and it was for you, that you're like, and part of it's tied to fitness, and I've never been much of a runner. I've tried it and I've done a little bit of it, but never too good at it. But the biking thing just seems but it's something about taking you back to a place when that sense of freedom first struck you on a bike, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's forever tied to that little kid aspect of our brain of, you know, it's fun. It's a fun activity. It's not, it wasn't work when we learned to ride a bike. Mm-hmm. We were out there with no water bottles riding in 100-degree weather, and we're happy to do it, you know, in denim cutoffs and, you know, how it was.
Yeah.
And we loved it. So, yeah, for me, you know, it was my late 30s when I got back on a bike after a couple decades of setting it aside, and it felt like a little kid again. And like I was this 10-year-old riding to the swimming pool again, is what it felt like. It wasn't work, you know, and that's a thing about fitness, is if you get into a fitness routine that feels like work, you're not going to stick with it very long. And I don't know, a bicycle doesn't feel like work. Yeah. It's kind of hard to ride one and not smile sometimes, you know?
That's how I feel. I just, you know, we talk about that too, that you're almost always happier on a bike than not, right? I mean, even if it's windy, even if it's hot, but you just feel kind of happy because you're on a bike and you're pedaling around, and you can just go around town or you can go on a serious ride, but you're just kind of like, hey, I'm on a bike.
Yep. And I do some of my best thinking on a bike. I don't know what it is. I think it's maybe the focus. But your mind is, I don't know, all of the clutter of life just kind of vanishes, and you're just, you're able to sort through stuff better. I had some epiphanies this year. I think every BAK, I have some like real productive moments of clarity just out there on the road. Sometimes you're riding at a pace where you're not really riding with the group. You're not really, you know, there were a couple times where I couldn't see another rider in either direction. Yeah. And you just have these clear thoughts. Yeah. Which appealed to me when I got into cycling, you know, late 30s, you know, life,
trying to sort some things out,
trying to sort things and understand where you are and where, you know, I was overweight, I was miserable in my job, and, you know, hop on a bike. Yeah. And the pounds and the worries just kind of both melted away at the same time.
Yeah. I've had that too, and I had some good thoughts this year. And I would be curious, and if there's any therapist or anybody who listens, I'd be curious to hear what theories. I've heard a couple in my life about the benefits of cycling and what it actually does psychologically. But I think there's a really interesting TED Talk I just listened to where a guy was talking about that it just generally, in cultures where there's more biking, some of the Scandinavian areas have a lot of biking. They build their infrastructure more around cycling than they do cars. And there's a lot of belief that that contributes to a certain level of happiness. That he showed a picture on this TED Talk of like 60 bikes on a bike trail. They're all going to work. They're all wearing suits and ties or shirts and ties. And there's 60 bikes and there's 4 cars on the road right next to the trail. And he was talking about how nobody in the traffic jam of bikes is unhappy. But if you had 60 cars jammed up at that stoplight, they'd all be unhappy. And there's just a lot of aggravation with driving a car when things get jammed up, and it just that I don't experience when I'm on a bike necessarily.
Yeah, not at all. It's just more carefree. Yeah. We'll get there when we get there.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things we like about BAK, right? Like the first couple of days, you're still kind of like on regular time, and you expect when you go into a quick shop, it's going to be like 3 minutes and you're in and out. And then you realize, well, no, we've got 30 people in this quick shop right now, all trying to get Gatorade or a snack or whatever. And so this is going to take a minute. And it doesn't really take too long to get into that, you know, the BAK time. That's just like, it's going to take what it's going to take. And you can't be uptight about it. Yeah. You can't be upset.
Because that'll throw off your whole week. Yeah. You've got to flow with the go and go with the flow, or you're just going to have a bad experience of BAK. Things happen when they happen. You know, we're riding to Hillsboro tonight. I'm riding slower than normal. Well, that's okay. They don't close Hillsboro at a certain time. Yeah. You know, that kind of thing. You get there when you get there. You might have to wait in line at the shower. You might not. Yeah. You don't know. You know, we've had towns where we've eaten them out of food before 7 o'clock. Mm-hmm.
Where while you're in line, they come put a sign on the door that says, "We're out of food."
Yep. And then it's like, well, you can be frustrated or get angry about it, but it's not going to get you any food any faster.
Yeah.
I mean, you just rode your bike all day. Go walk. Go walk to the quick shop. Go find your food. And when you can let go of the timelines and just let BAK happen, it's probably the best experience. I mean, you and I, this is aside from cycling, took a trip together where we had no expectations. We didn't even know where we were going.
Yep.
We just hopped in the van and drove, and it was probably one of the best trips, definitely one of the best trips of my life. And we just let it happen.
Yeah.
When you can let a vacation happen like that.
That was nice. We had a certain amount of time we were going to do it. We had a general direction we were going to go. And then each day we just said, where do you want to go? We just looked at the map and said, well, there's a bike trail here and there's a brewery here, and we could go in that area and see what we find. Yep. And you're right. That was one of my favorite trips too. We had such a good time doing that. But yeah, just doing all that, that kind of allowing, like you said, allowing things to happen, allowing them to unfold, which is one of the things I really always have appreciated about BAK. Just this openness to new experiences. You don't know what's going to happen, and as long as you're open to it, they happen. And you sometimes discover things you'd never, like the Rapping Grandma. I can't remember what town that was in. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. Yes.
She had this whole rap done about the town's history in rap form. And that was another one. In that year, that was kind of like the mint tea, right? Like everybody was saying, I had went into that town and I didn't catch her the first time because I went somewhere else in town. But then somebody said, did you see the Rapping Grandma? And I said, no. And they said, well, she's in the library or the historical society building or whatever. So that word was getting around, and they're like, oh, you got to go see this. So you may not have planned on doing that day, but by the end of the day, most of us had gone to see the Rapping Grandma. Mm-hmm. And just things like that you just would never, ever encounter in any other way.
Yeah, it's trail magic.
Yeah, yeah. Talking about when we were kids like this, and you kept saying like we don't have water bottles, and I think about it now. We didn't. My friend Nate lived outside of town, and we would, during the summer, we'd call each other and say, hey, am I riding my bike to your house? I lived in Nickerson, and he lived outside of town. And we'd call each other and decide whether I was riding my bike out to his farmhouse or whether he was riding his bike into town. And once we had that set, it was just a matter of waiting. And then one of us would ride out to the other's house. And it was probably 8 to 10 miles. So yeah, I'd do this bike ride, or we'd ride back, but we didn't even think about water. We'd ride that whole way. No, I didn't even know what a water bottle was at that age.
I don't remember ever having a bike when I was a kid that had the knockouts to put a bottle cage on.
I don't think so. I mean, it wasn't even a thing we thought about. You just got water when you got where you were going.
Yeah.
But yeah, now you wouldn't be caught. I have 4 water bottle racks on my bike. I don't want to be caught without water at all. And I usually have one with electrolytes and one that if it's really hot, I can spray myself down with. But yeah, I wouldn't go anywhere without 4 bottles of water, at least 2 bottles of water, big bottles of water. But yeah, when you're a kid, you just hopped on your bike. Now it's at least 2 water bottles and some food, and
you got to make sure you have your cycling shorts on and your chamois butter, and do I have sunscreen? Sunscreen? I don't even think I saw sunscreen in the 80s. They didn't even have it. It was suntan lotion in the 80s.
Yeah, it was what was that, Hawaiian Tropic, right? You try to get yourself bronzer, right?
Yeah.
You were inviting skin cancer in the 80s.
Yeah, you get that first couple of sunburns and hope they turn to a tan, and then you ride. But nowadays, it's there's a lot more that goes into our riding.
And as we get older, stretching becomes a bigger part of that too, yes. Right? Because your muscles get awfully tight at the end of the day. So there's some, although I didn't do a great job of that this year, but yeah, that's usually a thing that has to happen. Otherwise, things kind of tighten up, and it's a little bit rough the next day when you get your legs warmed up. And another thing I want to talk about here, well, we talk about all these experiences and all these things that we have, and it's really hard even talking about it to fully capture what BAK is like, right? Because there's just the whole thing is an experience, and it's encapsulated in these 8 days. But there's kind of like a feeling with it, right? And it's just hard to explain to people what that is. But let's try.
Sure.
I mean, you talked about summer camp. Did you go to summer camp as a kid?
A couple church camps in the summer, and it kind of had that feel. I think it's tough to talk about it without. I mean, you get a little deep,
a little of a klimt or something. Yeah,
get a little deep with it. I mean, when the pandemic happened and BAK got canceled, I mean, I felt a loss.
Mm-hmm.
2020, we were able to do our own BAK, Alt BAK, that Kimberly did almost pretty much all of the planning for, and we were able to pull it off. And then last year, another Alt BAK that I was not able to attend with you guys, but and I felt that loss. I mean, you were there with me. I mean, I shed tears over that. Yeah. So this year to actually have a BAK and the weeks leading up, is this really going to happen? Is it really going to happen? And it happened. It was like a gift.
Yeah.
Well,
one of the things that we talk about these epiphanies, one of the things I realized on this year's trip was just how much a part of my life this is, and how, like you said, how it was a loss to not have it, and how much I needed it, and didn't realize that fully. I knew I missed it. I knew I was sad that it didn't happen, but there is something at a core level that I needed it, and after 2 years of not being able to do it, not realizing until after the fact how big that was, and just what a part of life that is. And I think for a lot of people, just that it's this yearly. For me, it's this one time of the year where you have one single thing you have to worry about. You have every day. You have one job, and that's to get to the next town, and then everything inside of that is completely variable and up to you. You can take as long as you want. You can put your head down and get there as quick as you want. You can stop and talk to everybody. You can not talk to anyone. You can do whatever you want. You have one job, and that's it. And nobody's going to bug you about how to get there or how to get that job done. And for those 8 days, your focus and your purpose is very clear, and very little from the outside world penetrates that sort of bubble of BAK.
You have a great way with words.
And that's what it does for me. I mean, and then at the end of it, you're satisfied that you've done it, happy that you've done it, and then also it's a little bittersweet, because you're going to leave these people that you probably won't see very much at all, if at all, until the next year. But also that you have to walk away from this and go back to regular life, which sometimes I struggle with that after BAK, because I'm like, well, the rest of this is stupid.
Yeah. Return to orbit.
Yeah.
So, everything seems kind of dumb.
Yeah.
Hopping in a car the day after BAK just feels like wrong.
Yeah.
Use my blinker instead of on your left.
Yeah.
It's.
I hope we've done an okay job here, kind of explaining what BAK is. But one thing, a lot of people don't think they can do it, and let's tell them why they're wrong.
Oh, well, there are people of all ages, sizes, levels of conditioning. It's not a race, It's a social event, really. It isn't that there aren't some parts that, you really probably should train for it, but you don't have to train for the Tour de France.
Yeah.
the days are 50 to 80 mile days, and you have all day to do it.
Yeah.
And you can leave when you want. If you get tired, you can stop.
Yeah.
There's nobody with a bullhorn
Telling you got to do it.
you saying, get a move on. You want to stop? Stop. You want to pedal? Pedal.
Yeah.
The next town will be there. And it's a low pressure thing. Can't plan for the weather, but you can ride in the rain.
Yeah.
Anybody can ride in the rain. You can ride in the heat. It's if you have the right gear, the spandex is not a fashion statement. It's to help keep you cool.
Yeah.
It's something that seems intimidating if you've never ridden your bike 50 miles.
Mm-hmm.
But once you've ridden your bike 50 miles, you're like, oh, okay.
I can do that.
I don't even like to take my bike out if I can't do 30.
Yeah.
It just feels like, well, it's a waste.
I rode my bike this morning, and I do this a lot. If I won't even put my cycling shoes on if I'm not doing 25 or 30 miles. If I'm going to go out and do 15 or 20 miles, I'll just leave my sneakers on because I'm like, it's not. I don't want to do that. But if I'll do a longer ride, I'll put my cycling shoes on and clip in and all that. But otherwise, it's more like I'm just going to putter around and ride my bike, and I still will, work out and do all that. But yeah, it's like it hardly seems worth getting all geared up for anything less than 30 miles.
Yeah, and the numbers seem intimidating. 70-mile day sounds intimidating. It's just 10 miles, 7 times.
Yeah.
Go out and ride 10 miles. Take a break. Ride 10 more. Rest when you want. It's intimidating until you do it, and then you realize just how easy it is to do, and you just take care of yourself. I think some folks, they maybe don't take as good a care of their nutrition,
mm-hmm.
and so the next day you wake up, and if you haven't been on top of your nutrition, you wake up, you're going to feel drained.
Yeah,
you don't have the glycogen availability to get on and crank it out. So you just got to take care of yourself. And that's easy to do. All of these towns are trying to pump calories into you.
Yeah.
I've heard of people gaining weight on BAK. There's so much food.
Yep. There's pie, there's food everywhere. There's anything you want. You're not going to want for anything on food. Well, and that and hydration are the two big things, right? Mm-hmm. Just making sure you're hydrated, make sure you have electrolytes coming in. The training helps. You always have a better time if you train. My schedule doesn't allow me to do a lot of training in January, February, March, April, and May. I get to do a little bit, but usually I come in pretty weak, which always cracks me up because I usually start BAK sucking wind on the first couple of days. And then as the week goes on, I can see myself getting better. And usually by the last day, some people are pretty worn out on the last day, and I'm hitting my stride on the last day.
Right. Yeah. You end up you feel like you're just carved from stone. You're just like, rrr.
And that's the thing about it. Even though it's really about management, there's a lot of mental, awareness, I think, that comes into it, and a lot of managing yourself. But when you do it and you finish it and you cross it and you realize that you crossed the entire state. Kansas is a pretty long state. This year was 512 miles. You feel that sense of accomplishment is really remarkable, right? That, mm-hmm. Especially like the first year, the first time for first timers when they've done it and they did a thing. I know my first year, it was between, we came on the Transamerica route. So we came through Larned and then we came through Quivira, Sterling, stayed at Sterling. And it was on that road between that road from Larned to Sterling that I was like, oh, I'm actually going to do this. Up until that point, I thought there was a chance every day that I wasn't going to make it. But that road to Sterling, that's the first day that I was confident. No, I'll make this and I'll get across the state. And when that feeling hits you and then you do it, that's you can't really put that into words very well either. That sense of achievement that I was able to do this thing that 4 days ago, I didn't think I would be able to do.
Yep. Oh yeah. My first BAK, going to the Missouri sign, it was kind of emotional for me. It was like, wow. Like I felt like I just climbed a mountain. Mm-hmm. And speaking with Leroy this year, He put it great. He said that, the kids that ride with his group, when they get home from BAK, they're all about an inch taller.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like,
yeah.
Yeah, I got this.
Yeah.
You're proving something to yourself.
Yeah. And it translates to other parts of life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you get a sense for what it entails. And then the next BAK is a cakewalk.
Mm-hmm.
And you can put so many other parts of life in through that filter of the BAK accomplishment. And a lot of things just don't feel so intimidating.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is why I think it's so good to see kids doing it. Because I think to see those, that Leroy Hirschberger's got, I think he had, 25 kids this year.
Quite a few, yeah.
Riding with him. And it's just been more and more every year that he pulls into this. And you just think, for every one of those kids that does that, they do walk away feeling quite a bit better than they went into it. And a lot more accomplished and feeling that they can tackle harder things than they probably thought they could.
It's a great little perspective to have around, because those kids on the roughest days, those kids still all have a smile on their face. Mm-hmm. So when I pass them or they pass me, more often than not, they're passing me, it's like they've got that smile on their face, and that's why we're doing this. Yeah. We're having fun. And it makes me smile more. Yeah. It makes it easier to smile when it's 96 and 106 degree heat index. Yep. Makes it easier to smile when you see these kids out here doing it just like we did in the 80s. Yeah.
And you remember, that's what that's like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming in and talking to me today about this. And I know we could go on for a long, long time. We have a lot of stories and a lot of things. Some stories we can't tell. Some that we can, but it's always fun to talk about it. But I always try to wrap up with like one question, and this I'll ask it, even though it's kind of the center of what we've been talking about. But tell people maybe one thing about BAK or doing BAK that they don't know that you wish they knew, or one thing about why you do it that you would want people to know.
Oh, yeah, it's hard to sum up what we just talked about, mm-hmm. but it's proving to yourself that you can do big things. It's connecting with yourself. Mm-hmm. Really, it's clearing out all the clutter in your life and having one task and showing yourself that you can do it and having fun with it. Yeah. It's all of that wrapped up in a nice, tidy little bow.
Yep, with 2 wheels and handlebars.
That's right.
Well, thanks for coming in and talking about this today. And you and I, of course, will see each other more often than once a year on BAK, because we see each other quite a bit. But there is still something different about BAK. When we get there, it's like the air changes a little bit, and everything is just different.
It is. It's magic. It's magic. It's trail magic.
That's the best way to say it. It's magic.
Yep.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for having me on, man.
Absolutely.
All right.
I'd like to thank a few of the people who've helped make that podcast in Hutch possible. My son Mitchell Probst wrote and recorded the music for the show. Jenny Brigette put together some great graphics and promotional art. And Chris Acker helps overcome my mistakes to produce a great sounding product every episode. That podcast in Hutch is made possible through a collaboration between the Hutchison Arts and Culture Collective and Salt City Sound. They're working to bring resources and infrastructure to support art, music, and storytelling in our community. If you have an idea for your own podcast, reach out to them at podcasts@saltcitysound.net. If you enjoy that podcast in Hutch, be sure to subscribe and share it with all your friends. You can also help support this production by subscribing to thatguyinhutch.substack.com or by emailing me at thatguyinhutch@gmail.com to learn about sponsorship opportunities. Thanks for listening, and I hope you'll join us again next week.
action.